Underground. 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 Underground.
Greetings, surface dwellers. My name is Michael. These are my chthonic musings. Today's video is going to be the first part of a four-part series regarding the professions in the Dragonbane RPG. I hope you enjoy it. Profession. The next step is to select a profession for your character. Now, zooming out a little bit, this is in reference to creating your character. Choosing your profession is the third step after choosing your kin and noting down the innate ability or abilities of that kin. And the next step is also kind of related, choosing or rolling your age. There are three age categories for beginning Dragonbane characters: young, adult, and old. And they basically modify two things. One is how many trained skills you begin play with. As you can see, the older the character, the more trained skills they get at character generation. And the second thing is some possible attribute modifications for the young and old. Adult characters are unmodified. All the player characters are adventurers, but you have learned a thing or two before the game begins. Your choice of profession will determine much about your character, mainly your skills. 6 of your trained starting skills must be chosen from those listed for your profession. Profession also determines what gear you start out with and which heroic ability you get. There are 10 professions to choose from, all described on the following pages. You're free to select a profession or roll for one randomly using the table to the right. And just a few notes before we delve in detail into our first two professions, Artisan and Bard. It may be tempting to think of profession, especially if you're coming from another game like Dungeons & Dragons that is level-based, to think of professions as just another word for class. But Dragonbane is not a level-based system and has roots in more in the Chaosium's basic role-playing system than Dungeons & Dragons. So your profession will certainly establish a starting point for your character, and it's important which profession you choose. But once play starts, your character development then is not limited in any way by what profession you started with. Your character advancement will be more based on what occurs during play and what choices you make for your character at that point. Also, as a second note, I just want to bring this up here. Later in the rules, there is an optional rule called alternative abilities. If you feel that the heroic ability listed by your profession doesn't really match the character you want to create, the GM may allow you to choose a different starting ability. So this optional rule gives a little bit of leeway, even to character generation, for tweaking things a little bit, and not necessarily going exactly as the profession exactly is written. Now, this may sound a bit pretentious, but whatever you're making, you must be able to imagine the finished thing and then make it real. That's the whole of it, really. Well, tools are important too. Good tools. With a decent hammer, a trowel, and mortar, a skilled artisan can astonish even the gods. They are proud individuals, these tamers of nature and physical matter. Whether they be builders, bricklayers, wainwrights, blacksmiths, tanners, or coopers, the artisans are driven by a solemn mission to bring order and structure out of chaos. They construct bridges, houses, and fortifications, forge weapons and tools, mold pots and jugs, make barrels, and craft leather armor from tanned animal hides. Every village needs capable artisans, and they are often greatly respected for their practical and extremely useful expertise. An artisan's key attribute is strength. Their profession skill list includes axes, brawling, crafting, hammers, knives, sleight of hand, spot hidden, and swords. For their heroic ability, they choose either Master Blacksmith, Master Carpenter, or Master Tanner. Since this is the first profession that we're taking a look into, I think a little explanation is in order for what these things mean. The key attribute is kind of a guideline saying what attribute is probably of most importance for somebody that is choosing this as their starting profession. There are no real other rules that are tied to this. So there's no gating saying, you must have a minimum, strength in this case for an artisan to be an artisan. Or, you get certain bonuses for having a high strength other than the bonuses that anybody would get for having a high strength. Instead, it's just kind of guiding you along saying, because crafting is a strength-based skill, and that's, kind of your thing, crafting as an artisan. So that, strength really should be, up there as a primary choice to put your best or one of your best attribute scores. For the skill list, each profession will list out 8 skills. Of those, you must choose at least 6 of them to put for your profession. Now, in addition to those 6, you will also have 2, 4, or 6 other skills, depending on whether you're young, adult, or old. Those additional points do not have to come from your profession list, although they can. There's nothing preventing you from taking the other 2, the last 2 that you didn't choose from your 6. But you can choose from any of the core skills. And I'll just note here that, because you have these options, technically you could create an artisan that doesn't take crafting as one of the skills. It would be a bit odd, but it's certainly within the rules to be able to do that. I wouldn't necessarily suggest it, but it's a possibility. For the heroic ability, most other professions, the only other exception being mages, have a single heroic ability. So when you choose that profession, there's one heroic ability. The only proviso to that is the optional rule that I mentioned previously, where you could talk to your game master and say, I've got an idea, of this certain profession, let's say a fighter or something, but I would like my fighter to not have the veteran ability and rather have the berserker ability, let's say. Here for the artisan, we have 3 different heroic abilities to choose from, and they pretty much determine what type of artisan you're going to be. Each of these heroic abilities starts off with a requirement crafting 12, and then willpower points varies. The willpower is explained in the text below for each corresponding heroic ability. As far as the requirement, that does not apply during character generation when you are assigned, or given the heroic ability from your choice of profession. The requirement only applies later on if you're during character advancement and you're choosing a new heroic ability. Master Blacksmith. This ability requires blacksmithing tools. In one stretch, you can sharpen a bladed or pointed weapon at the cost of 3 willpower points. Against a sharpened weapon, the armor rating of an item counts as 1 step lower. The effect wears off after one combat encounter where the weapon was used to attack or parry. In one shift, you can craft a metal weapon or metal armor of your choice from the lists on pages 73 to 75. It requires a forge, an anvil, and iron, weight 1. The cost in willpower points is equal to the item's price in gold, rounded up. You can spread the work across multiple shifts if you do not have enough willpower points. Master Carpenter. This ability requires carpentry tools. As an action, you can inflict D12 points of damage per willpower point spent on a door, wall, or any other inanimate object, ignoring the object's armor rating. In one shift of time, you can craft a wooden item of your choice, such as a club, staff, or shield, from the lists on pages 73 to 75. It requires wood, weight 1 or determined by the GM, and costs a number of willpower points equal to the item's price in gold, rounded up. The GM decides the cost for unlisted items. Master Tanner. This ability requires leatherworking tools. You can craft one set of leather armor from the skin of an animal or a monster. The armor gets half the beast's armor rating, rounded up, but always has at least 1. It takes 1 shift, and the cost in willpower points is equal to the item's armor rating. Now let's talk about gear. Each of the professions has a table, such as this one for Artisan, where you can roll randomly or you can choose between 3 different options for your starting gear. And in addition, the each of these has a little bit of money, randomly determined, which you can buy some additional gear to pad things out if you so choose, and if you can afford it. Now for Artisan, the gear choices are tightly coupled with the heroic abilities. As you can see here, there are tools in each of the options, and they're different tools, and they correspond directly to the type. So if you're getting blacksmith's tools, it's probably because you're a master blacksmith. Carpenter tools for master carpenter, and tanner's tools for a master tanner. All right, again, so you don't technically have to do that, but it would be very odd if you're mismatched and you have the tools for a different heroic ability, and you don't have the tools you need to do your own heroic ability. And then finally, each profession has a table of nicknames flavored appropriately for that profession. In this case, for Artisan, we have such things as stonehammer or wood cleaver. This is useful for players that are new to role playing, or just need a little inspiration for picking a name. They can easily roll or choose from both this table and the first name table from their kin, and come up with names like Lothar Ironmaster, Bumble Barrelmaker, or Timalana Stonehammer. These are, of course, tools and not constraints. It won't break the game if you just, between you and the game master, just decide what are good names for your game. All right, having covered all the rules for the artisan profession, I'm going to indulge in a little bit of opinion now regarding this profession. First of all, I'll say that I do enjoy the fiction of the artisan as a character. and I think it's very interesting. It could be a great character to play. But the rules are regarding the artisan and crafting and gear in general. Well, specifically with regard to the artisan, is a little spotty, and I can understand that because the topic of crafting can be quite wide in games, and it's important in a game, especially one that you want to be approachable by first time role players, to not overload it with really verbose and extensive rules. But let me go over, some of the problems that I see, and offer a little bit of a solution. I'm not going to give a full-blown, a rewriting of what I think needs to be done, but just, pointers in what I think a game master could introduce that might shore things up a little bit. I'm going to start with the heroic ability and therefore type of artisan that I think has the most problem, and that is Master Tanner. Unlike the other two heroic abilities, Master Tanner only has one component, really, the crafting part. You can craft one set of leather armor from the skin of an animal or a monster, and this takes one shift of time, which is 6 hours. So your heroic ability is not applicable in combat, and it's not even really applicable in a stretch of time, 15-minute block, where you might be able to prepare for a combat or recover, so to speak, from the effects of combat. The other issue is that the armor that you get from this beast, or really we're thinking like the monsters, might get your hopes up a little bit for the rare instances where you do actually get to use your heroic ability. But the problem is the armor gets half the beast's armor rating rounded up with a minimum of 1, which it really means it's regular leather armor. The problem is very few monsters actually have an armor rating. In the core rules, there's really only 2. Not surprisingly, the Dragonbane, the dragons and the demons, which you probably won't be, or shouldn't be at least, combating at the early stages of your adventuring career. And even if you do at some point happen to fell, one of these creatures, the dragon has an armor rating of 6, which is, quite formidable, but so you could make leather armor with a rating of 3. And that's decent, make no mistake, but it provides protection somewhere between studded leather and chainmail. A little better than studded leather, not as much as chainmail. If you're able to make leather armor out of a demon, the demon has an armor rating of 4. So divide that in half, and you've got armor of 2, equal to studded leather, without the Bane on sneaking rolls. So it is a little bit better than studded leather. But other creatures, like if you were to fell a griffin or a manticore, neither one of them has armor rating. So if you make leather armor out of their hides, you have leather armor, basically regular armor rating 1. And I looked into the expanded bestiary book as well, and the same pattern pretty much applies. There were a few exceptions. The most notable I found was the basilisk, which also has an armor rating of 6. The Hydra also had an armor rating of 3, which would give you an armor rating 2 leather armor. But things like, other beasts like the Chimera, no armor. So an ability that's situational at best is further limited by the types of creatures that you'd have to be combating to actually get any benefit from this whatsoever. And one last issue with the Master Tanner, which is really just a quibble by comparison. If you were to choose the Master Tanner heroic ability, you would more than likely choose the gear that includes the Tanner's tools, which means that your weapon is going to be a knife. The thing with this, though, is that the knife's weapon skill is agility-based, not strength-based. And this puts some competition in when you're selecting your attributes. Do you want to be strength to be your highest attribute or agility to be your highest attribute? Not the end of the world, but it is a little bit of an issue. Now, master carpenters, besides the ability to craft wooden items in a shift of time, also have the ability to break things. And this is an action, so this is something that could be done during combat. Or it could be done outside of combat when the need arises for something to be broken. Just a couple of quick examples. Maybe, for outside of the combat, maybe you come across a padlocked door, and the first option is to have the thief use their lockpicks and sleight of hand and try to pick the lock. But if that fails, rather than just walking away, it may be option B, maybe for the master carpenter artisan to use their tools to break the padlock. This can certainly come at the cost of much noise, which could be unwanted, but this is why it's option B. But it's better than not having the option, right? Or being forced to break down the entire door. In combat, you could have, scenarios such as there are goblin archers up atop some wooden scaffolding or something, and rather than being forced to fight these goblins at ranged with ranged weapons and spells, or being forced to climb up there to deal with them, the master carpenter could use their tools and their ability here to break and destroy the scaffolding and bring the goblins tumbling down to your level where you can fight them hand to hand. Just as an example. One issue with this, though, is that beyond a few items in the gear list in the rulebook, such as padlocks, barrels, and chests, which do tell you those items' armor ratings and how many hit points of damage it takes to break them, the game master is kind of left to their own devices for determining that information for other things like doors in a dungeon, unless they have an adventure that provides that information. One resource that I've found very valuable for this and many other things regarding Dragonbane questions is something called the unofficial FAQ, a Google Doc document that was curated and edited by Matthias Svensson. I think I pronounced that properly. You can see the URL to access that document, which is currently, at the time of this video, available, but it's obviously a personal project, so there's no guarantees that it'll be available in the future. But one of the many questions that was, kind of addressed in this document is the armor rating and hit points of inanimate objects, with a helpful list here. And then from this, you can kind of, even if your specifics are not listed, you can kind of gauge and make a better determination of what you're as a game master going to assign for an armor rating and hit points. And then remembering that the master carpenter ability bypasses the armor rating, so you're straight into hit point damage, which is nice. The master blacksmith heroic ability, similar to the master carpenter, also has two parts to it. Besides the ability to create metallic weapons or armor in a shift, You also have the ability to, in a stretch, which is 15 minutes, sharpen a bladed or pointed weapon at the cost of 3 willpower points. Against a sharpened weapon, the armor rating of an item counts as 1 step lower, and the effect wears off after 1 combat encounter where the weapon was used to attack or parry. This is pretty straightforward and pretty nice, providing that you're fighting enemies that have an armor rating, which we saw before is not all enemies. Typically, if you're fighting like goblins or orcs or humanoids, and they're combatants, it's likely that they're going to have some sort of armor, leather armor, studded leather, maybe even chainmail for the chieftains. And this will help you out. As we saw with monsters, though, it's kind of spotty. Most of the monsters are not going to have an armor rating, so the sharpened weapons aren't going to really do much against them. So if you're fighting a manticore, a griffin, or a chimera, or similar type of monster, this isn't going to provide a benefit. For the hydras and the dragons and such, you will get a benefit. What I really like about this, honestly, though, is that the blacksmith, if you look at the gear, more than likely, if you choose the gear that corresponds to the master blacksmith heroic ability, starting out, you're going to have a hammer as a weapon, and so you're not going to be sharpening your own hammer. You're going to be using this ability for your allies, sharpening their swords and axes and maybe even arrows and crossbow bolts. Kind of facilitating a little bit of planning between characters, so you're not just focused on your own abilities and what your own characters can do, but kind of helping each other, which I think Dragonbane does very well. And there's one other disappointment that I'd like to address with this applies to all 3 of the Artisan's heroic abilities, and that is the idea of repairing items. Each of the heroic abilities has some text about creating new items, but I really think the strength of the fiction of the Artisan as an adventurer would really be bolstered by being able to repair and get the party out of the bind of having damaged or unusable items, weapons in particular. There are many rules built into Dragonbane for causing damage to weapons. Demon rolls in melee. One of the items is you damage your weapon and you get a bane until it's repaired by an artisan. Same thing with ranged combats. One of the possibilities is that you can break your weapon and get a bane until it's repaired by an artisan. During travel, one of the possible mishaps is an item is dropped and it's either lost or breaks. A somewhat rare but possible situation that's explained under armor ratings is that if a weapon's damage is completely negated by armor, then that weapon takes the damage itself. Most of the durability of weapons, we can survive this. The exception probably being the knife. But the most likely, probably the most common situation is parrying. When successfully parrying an incoming attack, you don't take any damage from the attack. But if that damage that would have been dealt to you exceeds your weapon's durability, the weapon that you parried with, then that weapon is damaged, and according to the rules, cannot be used until it is repaired with a crafting roll. I'm not entirely sure why the weapon can't be used in that situation, but they get a bane when they're damaged on the demon roll situation. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's the rules currently as written. And quickly, I just show here a couple of samples just to get a calibration of how much damage we're talking about for the durability of various weapons. Knife being 6 and a broadsword 15, staff is 9, and a large shield is 18. Also, mastercrafted items cost 10 times as much, but they do increase the durability by 3. The crafting skill, which anybody can do, some are better than others, but it is a core skill, says, as an adventurer, you must often repair your gear if it breaks. Typically, it takes 1 shift to repair a damaged item, and you need access to the appropriate tools. Now, the artisans may have the leg up in that they have tools, they have the appropriate gear for certain types of repairs. Blacksmith tools for knives and broadswords, and carpenter tools for staves and shields and such. But I really do think it would help the fiction a little bit and boost the artisans if they had a little bit of a hold my ale, I'll take care of this vibe to them. So having said all that, let me offer up my ideas for some potential hacks, homebrews, modifications, if you will. And remember, these are all my opinions, my ideas, and I'm not going to go into great detail in exactly how I would do it, just some general ideas. The first up is a hack to the Master Tanner. On page 48 of the Dragonbane rulebook, there's a section of optional rules called Special Attacks, and one of them is called Find Weak Spot. If your weapon is piercing, you can try to find a gap in the enemy's armor or natural armor. You get a bane on the attack, but if it hits, the enemy counts as armorless. My hack for Master Tanner requires that you are using this optional rule, that the players can choose to do this. And what I would say is, if the Master Tanner is finding the weak spot and the target is wearing leather armor or studded leather armor or has natural armor, that they can spend 1 willpower point to get a boon on this, which under normal circumstances would negate the bane. If they already have negated the bane with other boons, then it would boons do stack in Dragonbane. So they can, under that circumstances where they're fighting somebody in leather armor or a monster with natural armor, they can get a little bit of an edge. And that gives them a second ability, one that they could use in combat, that kind of puts them a little bit more on par with the Master Carpenter and the Master Blacksmith. The second hack is to allow armor to be, in some cases, damaged, similar to the way that that weapons are. Obviously, it would be different. You don't roll skill rolls to use your armor. It's more of a passive thing. But I'm not the only person to have thought of this idea. There is a publisher that you can look up on DriveThruRPG called Kerbango that has 2 third-party supplements for Dragonbane. Expanded rules for armor, which has some of this idea built into it, and expanded rules for weapons. I won't go through the details of how they approach us. That's outside the scope of this video. But I will also mention that I found some interesting ideas from Substack, from bjkeaton.substack.com or BJK Games. Also about armor durability and repair, and pertinent to this idea of putting in some hacks, the idea of a quick repair. And part of the reason for this, idea of putting this hack in is not all because it would be kind of interesting, but also it brings a little bit more of the Master Tanner back into it, because there are no real leather weapons that you're going to be parrying with. You're not going to be using your sling to parry, and there's no whip in the Dragonbane core rulebook. And even if there was, you're not going to be using a whip to parry. But by allowing some possibility of leather armor to be damaged, then you bring in the idea that you might have leather armor that needs to be repaired. And you might also have other leather items that get damaged, perhaps not in combat, but from journey mishaps, as things like bedrolls and water skins and boots and fur-lined cloaks and such. And then the last part of it is, I think I would add into each of these heroic abilities a specific option for an artisan to be able to do a quick repair in a stretch of time, 15 minutes, rather than needing an entire shift of 6 hours, and making a crafting roll, and being able to kind of jury rig or what have you, repair that item in a short period of time. Given that they have the appropriate tools and the item that we're talking about is within that tool's domain. So staves would need a carpenter and broadswords a blacksmith. And I'd give it a nominal willpower point cost, maybe 2 or such. This is would require some testing, and you might modify things and operate or lower the willpower point cost. But that's the general idea. Make the artisans the people that can turn things around and repair that item within the scope of an adventure, within a stretch of time. Otherwise, hopefully the party is got access to some backup weapons, spare shields, or can do without. And the only other thing I'd say with that is there are some other third-party supplements. This happens to be a topic that, regardless of the game, I are very interested in gear and crafting and repairing and breaking. So there's this supplement called Wear and Tear for a system agnostic. That's very good. Probably a little bit too crunchy for Dragonbane, but interesting nonetheless. And the other one I would take a look at when kind of hacking and finalizing the rules is the game Forbidden Lands, which is very heavy into crafting and gear and kind of like a survival vibe, and also shares the same lead designer as Dragonbane. So although it's got dice pool mechanics and very different things, but there already were some ideas that made their way from Forbidden Lands into Dragonbane. A few off-key notes, a couple of lost words, or a troll sneeze that sprays over the audience. It doesn't matter. To captivate an audience, all you truly need is charisma, that you shine like a midsummer sun, like me. Malva Sneezeweed. The memory of ancient deeds and riches is kept alive by the bards. They are singers, musicians, and entertainers. Many travel between inns and marketplaces, where they earn their keep through the telling of ballads and fairy tales. Others perform at princely courts, reciting glorious poems of dragons and heroic kings. Many bards see themselves as chroniclers responsible for preserving contemporary deeds in the memory of future generations. They are always on the lookout for people and achievements worthy of being immortalized in epic verse. And any bard worth their salt is always working on at least a few masterpieces of song, music, or poetry. A bard's key attribute is charisma. The profession's skill list includes acrobatics, bluffing, evade, knives, languages, myths and legends, performance, and persuasion. The bard's heroic ability is musician. There is a gear table, like all other professions, where you can roll or choose the type of gear. Of particular note for the bard is that each of the gear lists contains an instrument, a musical instrument, which may be a determining factor in which of the gear list that you'd like to choose from. And then finally we have our table of sample nicknames. The bard's heroic ability of musician is described as follows. A requirement of performance 12, and a reminder again, this does not apply to character generation, but if this heroic ability is added to a character afterwards, then they have to have at least 12 in their performance skill. Willpower points 3, cost 3 willpower points to activate. Your beautiful voice instills courage in your friends or fear in your foes. Activating this ability, an action in combat, gives all allies within 10 meters a boon to all rolls, or a bane to all enemies within the same range. Choose one or the other. The effect lasts until your turn in the next round. Instruments. You can use instruments for the musician ability. This can increase the ability's range or reduce the cost in willpower points. See page 75. Just a few quick notes about this. First of all, remember that monsters do not roll to attack. When a monster attacks, the game master will choose a roll from the table, and their abilities will just simply apply. Damage will be dealt, etc. For this reason, giving a bane to your enemies when you're fighting a monster, there is no skill roll, so the bane's not going to do anything for you. If you have mixed enemies, let's say you're fighting both the manticore and goblins, then sure, the goblins will be affected, but the manticore will not. So proceed accordingly. With regard to the effect lasting until your turn in the next round, I mentioned in a previous video on initiative that if a character uses the waiting option, their turn does not actually take place until their new later position in the initiative order. So waiting can be used as a strategy to lengthen, so to speak, the number of other player characters, your allies, that may be affected by this ability. If you make sure that you are starting one round fairly early in the initiative order, and then everybody that follows you in that round gets the boon that you grant to them, and in the following round, try to push yourself towards the end of the initiative, and they can also then get a second boon from that same one application of musician. And it does, your musician ability, that those boons don't cease until your turn. And if that's at the towards the end of that round, you've kind of maximized your effectiveness of that one application of this ability. And finally, the instruments. Your choice of gear will determine whether or not you start out play with a lyre, a flute, or a horn. And you might want to take a look at the musical instruments list, and you can see that the lyre reduces the willpower cost of the musician ability to 1 from 3. The flute reduces the willpower cost of the musician ability to 2 from 3. And the horn increases the range of the musician ability to 100 meters from 10 meters, keeping the willpower cost at 3. And then, of course, after play begins, you can always try to upgrade your musical instrument and search for those sweet, sweet bagpipes, which reduce the willpower cost to 1 and increases the range to 50 meters. Or choose as you wish. The only other commentary here I'll give on the bard is that the bards don't start with armor, but they are not precluded from wearing armor. The only profession that is explicitly hindered by armor, precluded from wearing it, is the mage, in that metal will interfere with magic and shut it down. So you are certainly, within the rights, if you would like to, of upgrading your bard later on to wear armor, if you so choose. There's nothing in the rules that makes the bard's abilities, the musician, explicitly magical. Although I will mention, not in these core rules, but in the upcoming magic book, I understand that there may be a magic school of interest to bards, or that they might be able to have access to. So if that is the case, there may be some instances where bards do have access to magic, and then they may be precluded from wearing metal if they wish to invoke that school of magic. I can't say too much more about that because I don't really have the rules in front of me of what might be coming down the line. And by the way, although I didn't mention it for the Artisan, the same type of thing applies. Even though the Artisan starts out with leather armor, there's nothing stopping them from upgrading during play of acquiring chainmail armor, plate armor, if they so choose. Although that might be easier said than done. Armor is not cheap. And so, until I resurface, may your successes be many and your failures be memorable.